Hey everyone, today I have Robert. So Robert is going to be a very interesting interview because number one, you will hear here, he had a lot of doubts about me and the program at first. He joined other courses like Marriage Helper. He tried the therapy route for 7 years. Um, and he was one of those people who joined the program and wasn't actually sold on my processes, my methodology. And he was floundering in the program for I would say a good year almost. But we'll
Pretty
get into
much.
that in a bit. Um, but let's go to the beginning uh, and start with how are things like in December 2021 when your wife was basically asking for divorce? What was she saying to you? What were the things she was saying to you? And how hopeless were things at that point in time?
Things were pretty bad. Um, I was in a weird spot in my career. I was in a weird spot in life at that point in time. And I'm sorry, I have dogs barking in the background. I'm trying to get taken care of. I was in a weird place and at a personal level, and we had been drifting apart for quite some time. I think we had gone through a lot with our kids. We have older, kids at that point. They were both in high school, and we were disconnected, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And there was an incident between us, a weekend where some stuff happened, and the band-aid got ripped off, and she said, "I want a divorce. I've been thinking about it for a while. Um, I'm back to where we were in the past." And she unloaded a list of things that she had been trying to tell me for years and that I had not listened to. And things were bad. Things were
How
really bad.
long were you guys married at this point?
That was 19 years.
19 years of marriage.
Married 19 years, and we were together three before. So 22 years. Yeah.
Mm,
And we were going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary the next year.
yeah. How
So
long would you say, if you could look back with 2020 vision now, how long would you say the problems were ha ha have been happening?
this may be a weird one, but as you always say in the program, no situation's unique. Um, my mother passed away in 2013. And I'll be frank, my mother was our informal marital therapist because my wife was like the daughter she never had. They were like best friends. And after my mom passed away, our relationship started to fray a little bit because that sort of nudge I used to get from my mom saying, "Hey, she's a little pissed off," right? Or this
Mm,
is going on. She was almost like the one who helped rebridge our emotional safety at times. And we started having problems in 2012, but they really blew up. Like we almost got divorced in 2015.
yeah.
And in 2015, we started doing marital therapy that went horribly wrong. We would come home from marital therapy and fight even more.
Mm,
But then we found a really, really, really good marital therapist who helped us a lot. She was amazing.
mm,
And she helped us put our marriage back together at that point in time, or so we thought, right? We had fixed things, we were back together, we were happy, but I think we had put band-aids on things. We hadn't really
yeah.
fixed the underlying issues.
I think that's really the hard part with marriage issues. So I always say marriage issues, no matter what they are really caused by the lack of emotional safety. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the reason why, if you look back at why were you so blindsided at what seemed to be such an obvious breakdown over time of the relationship, um, but also why the relationship broke down and she wasn't able to even tell you about the fact that it was breaking down is because if you lack emotional safety and a lot of misunderstandings happen because of that, a lot of conflicts happen because of that, your partner can never tell you that she lacks emotional safety because there's always a lack of
Right.
emotional safety to even tell you there's a lack of emotional safety. So the only way people often find out that things have gotten really bad is when the ball drops,
Mm-hmm.
when they say, I want divorce, I want separation, something really shocking. And that's when people like you eventually scamper about and try to find some program, some tool to figure out how to get help.
Yeah,
Um,
so she had told me in 2015, and then it happened again in 2018.
mhm.
And then during COVID, we had a rough situation. We had two kids home learning, and I was running a business from home, and it put a lot of stress on us. And she was like jumping at my office door, telling me, "Hey, we got to go to therapy. We got to go get some help." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, we're fine." Uh, so I think in terms of the program, though, the biggest thing for me was um, I used to play the high value man card.
Mm.
I make all the money in our house. She was a stay at home mom. So I make the money. I treated her well. We go on great family vacations, all that stuff. And I used to look at her and say, "Hey, the problems aren't with me. The problems are with you. You're the one with depression and anxiety." She suffers from
Mm.
clinical depression and anxiety. And I used to blame our marital issues on that, not on me.
Interesting. When she said she wanted a divorce at that point in time, the 2021 version of that,
Mm-hmm.
what how done was she in your mind? Like,
Oh, finished, completely done.
what makes you say that?
It was very uncomfortable in our house. We it it's hard to describe, but there was a lot of I did some things after she asked me for a divorce that were exactly the opposite of what somebody should do. I made her feel bad. I made her feel guilty. I made her feel like she was destroying our family. I tried to use logic to convince her to stay in our marriage. I tried to pull the whole, "You're never going to be happy. You don't know what you're getting rid of."
Mm.
I tried to guilt her with the children. Um, it just, it, I did everything imaginable to stop looking in the mirror and look at myself and say that I actually could have been the problem. And there was a 2 month period in December and January 22, where I was a miserable human being to live with.
Mm.
And I probably did a lot more damage to our relationship then.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people do, right? It's um if you akin this to a business, it's almost like you're finding out your business is about to go bankrupt. It's You've been losing revenues for a long time and you realize, okay, I got to try some short-term tactics here. Whether that short-term tactic is fear-based, I need to instill
Yeah.
some fear in my customer base, whether it's some manipulative logic or promotional thing that you're doing, false promises you're doing, whatever it is, you're basically trying to say like, okay, the intrinsic value is down. I need to up my extrinsic value right now. I need to appear good right now, right?
Right.
And I need to save it right now.
And I don't think it's a conscious, I know in my case, it wasn't a conscious decision to do that, but I was panicked, right? Here's the person I'm the closest with in my life and my family and everything blowing up around me. And I didn't have the skills or understanding of what actually got me here and what do I do now? And I think, a lot of people lack that. I had no clue what to even do.
Yeah. So you said December 2021 to June 2022, you guys really tried to piece it together yourself. Um, and you mentioned that included like a you joining Marriage Helper for 3 days, the 3 day seminar that they do in
We
April
did.
2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We
What
went,
else did you guys try? Yeah. What else did you guys try besides Marriage Helper? What was your idea of trying to piece it together yourselves?
so the first thing we did was went back to our marital therapist that we had been seeing for years, who knew us very well. And she's very, very good. Um, but the same things would happen. I would bring home the issues from marital therapy and like throw them back on her at home.
Mm.
So that didn't work. Um, my son was a senior in high school. We were trying to get to his graduation in June before we told the kids. So we were still sleeping in the same room. We weren't officially separated. Um, I was trying to, I used a lot of trying to convince her. Then one day I found Marriage Helper and I started doing some of their stuff on my own. And I tried to convince her to go to their 3 day workshop. I thought that that could help us.
Mm.
And I will say it was an interesting experience. I think there's some value I gained out of it and that she gained out of it, but it's a very passive program. It's illuminating for somebody who's in the dark like I was, that here are all the things that could have potentially gone wrong. And I was pretty emotionally illiterate. And uh, you know, so it opened my eyes to holy shit, I missed all this stuff. Um, but at the same time, it's like, hey, go work on your pies and hopefully she comes around someday. And that, I don't know, that how does that fix your even your friendship? It doesn't. So um it was there was some value, but that was it. And after we came back from that, she's like, yeah, no, still doesn't work for me. And we waited until my son's graduation, high school graduation, and then we literally told the kids the day after, and I moved out of our bedroom and we're separated in the same house.
Yeah. And feel free to not answer this if you don't want to answer, because I don't want to make this
Sure.
about like bashing marriage help or whatever it is. But obviously we have a lot of clients who have joined that program as well, either the seminar or the program itself. So it's almost like the philosophy of if you build it, they will come kind of philosophy.
Yeah.
But there's a problem with that. There's two problems with that. Their idea of what building it means is not really that comprehensive, right? So they tell you, for example, like build your pies, and they tell you maybe a bit of like why it's crucial. But they don't tell you how. They don't tell you what a high standard building pies look like. What was your experience with that? With them teaching you about pies?
So
And yeah.
I think like the easiest thing. Oh, pies. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm overweight. I'm gonna go start hitting the gym and lose weight, right? And I may be single now too, so I'm gonna go get myself a shake. That one's easy, right? But like the E is really hard. Like emotionally, like how do you work on your emotions? How do you work on the spiritual is easy. Okay, you start going to temple, you start going to church, whatever it is. But how do you work on your emotions
And the
if
spiritual
you
side of
don't?
things. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't really know how to work on that. So again, I thought for somebody as emotionally illiterate as me that the 3 days was somewhat illuminating. Um, in that you meet a lot of other, like you say in the program, no situation's unique. We met a lot of people there that were in long-term marriages that were blown up, but it didn't send you home with, okay, here's how now. Here's the prescription for working on myself and working on things. It didn't do that.
Mm. And I think also like the going back to the if you build it, they will come. It's almost like, because in the program, not only do we go very deep into telling you how to connect with yourself emotionally and fix yourself emotionally, internally, but also how to understand, have compassion, read other people's emotions, how to make other people feel understood, how to build that emotional safety, the emotional connectedness, etc. But we also, in doing that, we're also telling you, okay, once you build your product here, here's also how you market yourself. Here's how you start those conversations. Here's how you begin conversations. Here's how you campaign in a way. It's not just like build it and then, okay, lemonade stand up. Customers any day now. It's not like that at all. It's like, let me teach you how to
Yeah.
go in.
I think what I saw from the program when I talked to, after I did the master class and I talked to Jason was, you know, the hard look I had taken at myself at that point was
Mm.
it isn't just my marriage that's messed up. My relationship with my kids is not where I want it to be. And like some things at work weren't going great. Like, and I finally, through a conversation with Jason, wow, maybe I'm the problem. And maybe I'm the one who needs fixing. And that's what drew me to the program was, whether my marriage works out or not, I need some fixing. And I saw some things in the master class and things I had heard about the program that led me to believe, there's going to be value for me in this regardless how things turn out. And
Mm.
that's what was attractive to me about the program.
So after you did the marriage helper one, April 2022, you said in June 2022, You
Hmm.
officially separated, lived in the same
Correct.
house, different bedrooms.
Hmm.
What was some of the catalysts from the marriage helper thing to June that made her escalate the decision to separate, to actually take action on that, to sleep in separate bedrooms, etc.? Or was it just a normal degradation, a continued degradation?
No, it was more has to do with the laws in the state we live in. You have to be separated for a year before you can file for divorce if you have minor children. So we had to officially be separated for a year, and neither one of us wanted to leave the kids. And we
Mm.
said, okay, well, we don't hate each other. We'll live in separate rooms, and we'll be respectful, and we'll start to figure out our own lives, and we'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a degradation. It was she was done. Like the week after,
It's just more of like,
she'd been
let's
done
just,
for a while.
yeah. Yeah. So let's just like finally
Um,
take action on like what we need to eventually divorce in a proper way.
to
And
start the
yeah.
correct.
Okay. So you enrolled then July 2022, which is a month after the whole
Correct.
separation, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you said here, and you know, a lot of people think when people join the program, it's instant like boo, success. Like it's not like that at all. Um, you know, if even if you look at someone like Tom Wild, which who we'll talk about in a bit, who inspired you to actually do the program properly, he started doing the program from day one properly, and he only got his results probably a year and a half in to the program.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about why the results needs to last will always take very long too. Um, but you said you struggled immensely with the program at first.
Yeah.
Basically, from July 2022 to March 2023, you were just floundering around in the program. And you said a few things here in your write up to me that was like interesting. It's like you were full of victim mindsets for one. You had equal
Big
blame
time.
illusion. You said in perfect product illusion.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that? Like, what were you thinking in your mind when you saw the program, when you were in the program? What was going through your mind that made you?
I didn't know shit at first. Like that's everything I've been doing for years, right? And meaning equal blame. Like why am I having to do all this work now, right? And she's not even trying to save our relationship. Um, she's been trying for the last however many years. She'd been telling me, right? And I didn't even realize. Like she's been putting in all this work. She used to tell me I need you to get some help. I need you to you need to do some work on yourself. And I'd be like, it's your problem. And now the script had flipped a little bit and it was her going, I'm done. And I'm like, no, we should work on this. She's like, I've been trying to tell you this for years. Um, Perfect product. I do, I would say, like, if you were to ask neighbors, if you were to ask even my wife, right? I'm a good dad but I go overboard and I'm, help with the hockey. I help with all the sports. I do the weekly food shopping in our house. I make all the money. So I looked at myself saying, doesn't she know what she's going to be missing here? She's never going to be able to make it on her own. She's crazy.
Mm,
Um, and, you know, we tend to look at ourselves. It's hard to look at yourself and say, I was the problem. And I used to hold myself at much higher esteem than my kids and my wife did. So I was full of that. And I was full of some victim mindsets that I think have perpetuated from earlier in my life that I've just never dealt with.
yeah.
And, you know, it came full circle.
It all sort of it's very similar, mirrors very similarly to what I thought about when I was going through my denial and victim mindset stage, right? So at that point in time, I was trying to build a business and I was really busy at that time. I was always stressed. I was
Mm-hmm.
really terrible to be around. Um, and every time I would have kind of my breakdowns, or every time I would just show up in not the best way, emotionally, spiritually, with people. And my partner would just express her disgust, her total, just like dislike for that. I would think in my head, what an ungrateful bitch, right? Here I am working my ass off. Here I am stressed. And all you can do is just pick on me, right? What do you want from me? Like, you'd be lucky to have someone who works as hard as me. You'd be lucky to have someone who works for their future like me. You'd be lucky to have someone who provides like me. And you justify all this value that you think you're creating. But then now I realize, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, all that stuff that I think I'm valuing, it's just like the low level shit. But you're not creating any of the self-actualized stuff, anything like that. And you
And
wonder,
I wasn't doing it with my kids either.
yeah,
And that's like the thing I realized, like, my older son and I were getting more distant, and my younger son, he's 16 now, but we'd always been really close, and we were drifting, and it wasn't because of him, it was because of me. And like I said, when I first joined, I also was like, oh shit, like I really am emotionally illiterate. I saw the
yeah.
way.
So,
So
so I think you said like you did not want to face the reality that a lot of the stuff that was happening in your relationships, not just marriage relationship, but with your kids, maybe even with your friends and your colleagues, was really an internal
definitely.
issue.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, I think, a lot of people's issues is that, I think the hard part to swallow about this program is that it's so in your face and it's so
Mm-hmm.
on the nose about just making you realize just how much you fucked up and how much you messed up and how many issues you have within yourself that you need to confront, you need to accept, and you need to work on, etc. I'm guessing that was what you're referring to when you first joined the program. That was what kind of made you balk at the program, made you resist the program, made you, yeah.
Yeah, and you get thrown in this. You get into the videos and you get in the Facebook group, and you start to go, whoa, like holy smokes, like the more advanced members, you're like, wow, these people really know they're in touch with themselves. They get it. And I'm like, I'm an idiot. How the hell am I ever going to do this? So it can feel overwhelming, but at the same time, um, I was sort of kicking and screaming. I was doing the videos and I was doing the things you would tell us to do in
Mm.
the order you would tell us to do it in. But I don't think I truly believed that I was changing or capable of change. And I don't think I truly believed that I could get really dramatic results in my life from following it. At times I was like, I don't understand why I'm doing all this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I think, just one thing I want to say to people who either clients or people who potential clients who may join the program and feel the same way, feel that intimidation, feel that just the overwhelm of like, oh my gosh, I don't just need to go from level 1 to 5. I need to go from level 1 to 150 now.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a big climb. And it's a much higher climb than I thought. Just know that every person you see in a program who's advanced, who's done it, who's got success, like Tom Wild, we'll talk about him. Um, they started off on level 1,
Mm-hmm.
right? And every like these people have done that. Like it's almost like trying to argue with Usain Bolt, for example. It's like, no, what you were doing is impossible. No, it's not impossible. It's already been done. It's not up for debate anymore. Like this is a fact. Um, but how do you read a 1,000-page book? You read a 1,000-page book 1 page at a time. How do
Right.
you read a 10,000-page book? You read a 10,000-page book the same way you read a 5-page book, 1 page at a time. Same thing, one level at a time, and you'd be fine, right? Um, you also said you thought the program was weird at first. How so?
Yeah. I think like I don't know. I saw some of the more advanced members, like with auto suggestions, recording that and talking about their emotions and how they feel. And I'd be like, who does this? Right? How is this going to help me? And, you tell us don't focus on those people who are ahead of you in the program, right? Focus on where you're at. But, I'd be watching somebody's hedge and be like, how are they talking like that? And I think that, when you come from a place where you've been walking around wrongfully certain about yourself your whole life, about, here's how secure I am in me. I'm a high value guy. I make good money, provide for my family. You don't think like I need to learn new skills for how I relate to people. And for me, like it was just weird the stuff people were doing. It was extremely challenging and made me uncomfortable. And that's how you learn stuff, stepping out of your comfort zone. But at first it was very weird and uncomfortable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was making that section on the auto suggestions and having people record stuff and post stuff on Facebook, I did think to myself too, who would do this? Right. But then when I launched that version of the program, people were doing it, and people who were doing it were getting success faster. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be so shy to actually ask people to do what they should do. Right.
Right.
And maybe it's okay for me to suggest to people to do something that they feel uncomfortable doing, because if I just suggest stuff that they feel comfortable doing, I'm scamming them in a way, because I'm just like telling them what they already know. But it's also, you mentioned something interesting, which is like, you mentioned you were also doing like high tech sales, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure you doing high tech sales and you thinking to yourself, I know how to communicate. That's what I do. I communicate. I convince. I inspire people. Like,
Right.
yeah,
I listen to people for a living and get up and propose solutions. And you're telling me I can't communicate and understand what my wife and children are saying? That's crazy.
yeah.
So yeah, that was a big part of it too.
I think the one realization I had, because I did sales, like I didn't do sales in your way of doing sales. I did like more consulting,
Mm-hmm.
and management work, which is also sales in the sense of we're trying to inspire people to take action, to buy into the goal, whatever it is. Um, and I used to think that I knew a lot about like psychology. I knew a lot about understanding people, listening, etc. But you know, listening in a romantic setting, it's a level of listening, a level of understanding, a level of connecting, a level of communicating that is way different than career stuff, right? Like you are talking about like when you're selling to someone, for example, you're not exploring the full extent of someone's deepest fears, deepest secrets, their subconscious.
Yeah.
You know, like you're not talking about that stuff. You're not talking about sensitive things. You're not talking about exploring this weird stuff. But in a romantic relationship, that's the one relationship where, yeah, all that stuff will show up, right? And not only will they show up, you need to talk about them under duress, right? So whenever we go to work, we put on our best self. And usually when we come home, we're tired from work. That's when we don't put on our best self. Basically, we treat home like, okay, this is the part where I don't have to like pretend I'm an awesome guy anymore.
Yeah, I had a huge issue with that too, by the way.
Mm.
That was part of over the years what led to the breakdown of our marriage is um historically over the years I've worked for publicly traded companies where I had to deliver results each quarter. And the last week of the quarter, there would be immense pressure to bring in certain amounts of business. And, my entire family knew it's the end of the quarter. Let's not even be around him. Right.
Mm.
And I would bring my job uh, into the relationships I had in my house, and it wasn't in a good way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Um, so you continue to half-ass the program basically until March 2023.
yes.
Uh, and then you saw some of the community members calling you out on it, on the fact that you
Yeah, I got
were
called
half-assed.
out. Yeah, so there was some of us who started around the program around the same time, and we had, um, in addition to the Facebook group, we had a little group chat where we would every once in a while, hey, I'm stuck on this. Can you help me with this? Um, and guys would occasionally ask, hey, I looked in the program for this and I can't find this. Does anybody remember exactly what phase this is in? And I would fill that with uh, true but useless information we call TBU in the program about, hey, this is going on in my life with with my wife, and how do I do this? And guys would be like, dude, like, how does that relate to the program and what you're doing in the program? And I was at that point in time, I should have been well on my way towards understanding conceptually and be working on untethering from outcomes. And I was massively outcome focused on everything. And I got called out. And I don't remember who specifically, but one of the guys in the group was like, dude, you need to restart. You need to go back to the beginning. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Where were you in the
And
program at this point? Which part of
I
the
I
program?
I got into phase three. I got into P3, uh, phase three, module two,
So
into the
you've
frameworks.
invested like
Months, hours.
like hundreds, almost hundreds
Yes.
of hours. Like, yeah, at this point.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
wasn't doing it the right. I
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
doing it the right way.
yeah. So you don't remember who told you to restart, but then
Yeah, I kind of do, but
what
I
made
don't know.
you decide, okay, fine, I'll restart.
So I was at a point where, you know, we were deciding, like, some things were coming to a head with our home, taking the next steps in our divorce, just some things going on with us where things weren't getting better at that point. Um, at the same time, I ran across, there was another member's thread. I was still active in the Facebook group, even though I had stalled on modules. And, Tom had called somebody out. It said, if you really love your wife and kids as much as you say you do, you'll do the fucking work. And I don't know why, but that just resonated with me. And, you know, I had been somebody at times in my life that sought shortcuts, and rather than do the really hard thing, I'll go the easier route.
Mhm.
And I sort of recognized, hey, you're doing that right now. And do you really care? Regardless of what happens with your marriage, don't you owe it to your wife and kids to be the best guy you can be? And I literally, like, sat on it for a couple of days. I'm like, I'm restarting this thing and I'm going to do it right.
So you knew in the
So
back of your head, because like what I'm wondering in my
yeah,
head is, you invested 100 plus or like hundreds of hours into the program already, and it's like clearly not working. What prevented you from saying like, fuck this shit, this doesn't work?
I was pretty close to it. I'm not going to lie. I was pretty close to it. Um, you know, I don't know what it was. I guess it was seeing some other members who had restarted, um, who were thriving, not surviving, and seeing other members who were in a place where, they were making progress in their lives, and I felt like I was in a really shitty place in my life, and I was feeling really shitty about myself. And I had a therapist outside the program, and I was talking to him about the program, and he's like, why aren't you doing it the right way? Because he loves the program. I used to go talk to him about the program, and he loves it. Um, so I, I can't really put my finger on it. I just had a gut check moment with myself that said, and it was really about my kids. Like, they deserve a better dad. They deserve a better guy. My wife deserves a better person, regardless of what happens with our marriage. We're going to be tied together forever because of our kids. And, I want that to be a positive thing. And to me, it looked like the program had the answers. I just had to figure out how to do it the right way.
Yeah. So I think like the other members getting success kind of showed you the potential of what could be. And I think in the back of your mind, you also had to admit to yourself, like, I know I'm half-assing this. I know it, right? So it's almost like you join a fitness course and you're not losing weight instead of you gaining weight, and you're like, well, I can't really blame the course because like I know I half-ass. I know I eat fries every single day and I eat the ice cream that day and stuff like that. I know I did that, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair because like at first I hadn't created any auto suggestions. I hadn't even booked a coaching call with you guys. I was afraid to do a coaching call with you guys, and some people called me out on that too. And they were like, "Have you even done a coaching call?" I'm like,
mm.
"No." They're like, well, I'm like, "Oh, I didn't think I needed to do that." Well, you're floundering after 8 months in the program. What
What
the
are you
hell are you
doing?
doing? Yeah. So yeah,
So, there's obviously, and I told this to Jason the other day, and Jason's one of our team members, guys, just in case you're wondering. I'm creating V4 the program right now, and I've dedicated probably about 400 hours into it, and it's gonna take probably another like year and a half to finish it, year and a half to 2 years for me. So it's been like an insane undertaking for me. Uh, and one of the biggest change I'm gonna make to that version is putting and clarifying someone's why earlier on in the program, like in the beginning, right? Why do you do this? Do you understand what's at stake here? And I think that's exactly what you're talking about is like once you understand what's at stake, you really have no reason to half-ass it anymore in your own mind, in your own soul, right? So if you were, let's say, you were a coach, let's say, and you see some people in the program who are half-assing it like you did in the beginning, doubting, either doubting themselves in their ability to get there, doubting the program by extension because they were doubting themselves. What would you say?
I mean, it happens, right? We see new members coming in
Happens.
who are not doing well. And I think some of them get smacked around a little. They get what we call tough love in the group. But I also think there's people who will reach out to them and say, hey, you have to go back to the beginning and you have to really examine, number one, your study habits, right? So P1M2 that teaches you how to learn. You come in, you're an executive sales guy. Oh, I know how to learn. I don't know how to learn. I used to have 20 windows open on my machine, interrupted by my phone, going here to here. I'm doing your modules. I got text going, right? I got all that happening. I would tell people, and I have told people, you have to go back first to the victim mindset work, and you have to check yourself there and make sure, like, am I playing victim by not putting in the work?
Mm.
I was. I didn't want to do the work because number one, the work's hard.
Mm.
And number two, it reveals things about yourself that may not be the easiest thing to look at and accept about yourself, because you have to be brutally honest with yourself in this program. And you have to look at how many people come through this thing that when they do the work the way you're supposed to do the work, wind up in an awesome place.
Yeah. And that's the part that keeps me at night, Robert, to be honest, is this program should have a 100% success rate, right? And the fact that it doesn't, because people don't do the work, it keeps me up at night. And that's why I keep like iterating on the program to be like, what am I missing? What am I missing? Right? Like people have a freaking treasure right in front of them. They have no idea what their life will be like once they finish this. This is
Right.
different than any other program, any other thing you can ever do, if only you do it. Right?
I
Um,
I think part of it is what we learn in society today that goes against the norms we get fed every day on TV and in life about you should never feel bad about yourself. Everything's we get fed victim stuff around us every day, right?
mm,
And as anybody who's gone through a separation or divorce knows, you have friends who are in your ear. Oh, you'll be better off. I'm sure she has friends. Oh, you guys will be better off apart. Everything will be great. You get fed all this stuff and all this noise from all these places. And what we learn in the program at times is a little unconventional. And I think people I know I did the first time. I freaked out a little, like this. How's this going to help me? So and it's hard. Like I'm not saying I don't want to scare people away. Like, oh my God, this is so hard, you can't do it. But it's hard to look at yourself sometimes when people tell you to play victim your whole life.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk more about that a bit later, and kind of like getting people to understand what the victim mindset is and how to actually get out of it. I wanted to spend some time on your experience with your therapist a bit. So you said you
Sure.
found a great marital therapist. Um, but why wasn't that enough, you think?
So our therapist is she's she was fantastic. Like after we were at two other ones, she allowed us to connect the dots again and see through some things. Ultimately, where I think it failed is we would come home from marital therapy, and that emotional safety that's created in the room when she was there, and my wife would feel free to talk about certain things. But then we would come home, and it might not be right away, but maybe a day later, I would sort of flip it around like, hey, you said yesterday that I did this, and I don't really think I did that. I think you did this, right? So immediately
Uh,
the safety that was created in therapy the day before would start to break down again. In my particular case, I used to what about stuff to her all the time. I used to turn it back on her when we came home. And I didn't want to accept that I was doing that. And I was doing that. And, so we go back and see her again.
yeah.
And then I would realize some of the things I'm doing, and I'd get better for a while, but I never really addressed, and we never addressed the super, super core issues. We would keep putting band aids on, and not because she was a bad therapist, just because you can't bring her home with you.
And
And
that's what I wanted to say too. It's like, you know, because I've made some videos about the dangers with therapy, why therapy doesn't work, stuff like that, right? And people always get upset at that, especially therapists, right? Because they're like, well, not all therapists are bad. What we're saying here is not about how good or bad the therapist is. We're talking about the systemic problem that is how therapy is structured, right? No matter how good the therapist or bad the therapist is, you can only see them once or twice a week for an hour at a time. You cannot bring the therapist with you. And that's just a systemic problem with it. And in an hour, once or twice a week, the therapist cannot sit there and teach you like the program teaches you and go like, here's the principles behind this. Here's the how. Here's your homework. Submit your homework, and we'll talk about your homework later. Like, it doesn't work that way. It just cannot work that way. Um,
okay.
so no matter how great the therapist is, and I thought about this too, because I found some great therapists who people I really respect, people I really admire, people I really thought was like brilliant, right? In understanding the mind, allowing me to understand my mind and what was going on, and leading conversations and leading the interactions. But at the end of the day, you need to become your own doctor, because
Mhm.
you're going to be faced with so many permutations, limitless permutations of things that can happen in your relationship. You need to learn how to diagnose and treat on your own.
Oh, for sure. I think like that's the biggest thing is for us, um, you know, we would keep putting band-aids on with her, but then the issues would be when we were outside of therapy, right? 2 weeks, oh, we haven't seen her in a month. During COVID, we didn't see her really. She was closed for a while and we couldn't see her. And that's when, you know, things got much worse between
Mm.
us. So yeah, I believe in therapy. I still see an individual therapist. And my therapy sessions now actually consist of him and I review what I'm working on in the program, which is great.
When you first joined the program, I know your therapist was skeptical. What
Very
was
skeptical.
what did he say to you, or what did she say to you about the program? What was the source of that skepticism, you think?
So the skepticism was from my individual therapist that I was seeing,
Oh, okay.
not a marital therapist. And the skepticism was when I told him about some of the concepts from the master class, he's like, what is this guy's qualifications? And I'm like, well, let me tell you about that. He's a young guy. Yeah. He's like, what college did he go? I said, I don't even know. I don't really care. So, I think sometimes people of your age, they look at your background and, he's like, I don't know how this could work. But then I started showing him more of the portal and the concepts and everything. And he started seeing, even though I failed the first 8 months through the program, um, he noticed changes in me and people around me did. They started seeing me change, even though I wasn't doing it the correct way. I was changing, just not as drastically as I needed to. Um, and he started seeing positive things in me and was saying, hey, show me more about this program. So I would tell him, hey, here's what I'm doing. But my initial skepticism was his initial skepticism, excuse me, was just more around what are your qualifications, how many people have been through this, etc. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I have learned to live with that for the rest of my life. I'm just gonna say like I'm probably gonna get that because I will never waste my time getting some degree or qualifications because I think, Robert, that will actually put me backwards rather than forwards. Um, and so what I always say to people is like, if your idea of qualifications is degrees, then yeah, I'm not your guy. But if your idea of qualifications is results and proof of those results through interviews like this, then I'm your guy. Depends on what your idea of qualifications are, kind of thing. Um, so you had a lot of doubts about the program when you first joined. So I was too young. And you said also you thought the people were paid actors. Like, what? Tell me more about that train of thinking.
yeah, so like I don't know, maybe I had a couple drinks one day, but I'm in there and I'm looking and I'm like I was looking at people's in our group, like some people I was friends with in there, looking at their profiles, and I'm like, they're all younger than me. So I'm over 50. So there's a lot of members that are younger than me or people that were in marriages that are 5 years and or they had girlfriends, they weren't even married. And I'm like, maybe I picked the wrong program. I don't know how many, but then I'd be like, wait a minute, here's 10 other guys who have been married 20 years just like me. Right. Like what am I thinking? But I don't know. It was just a weird moment I had, like thinking, what if this guy had just hired a bunch of actors to do auto suggestions and paid them all, and he's making all this money, and like
That
it's
would
all
be
a bunch
some
of
scheme.
bullshit. It
Yeah.
was I clearly I wasn't having a good day with the program.
That would be some scheme, man. That's
Yeah,
hard to pull off. But
yeah,
like which is why like in these interviews, I have stopped some interviews before where I was like, you're looking at your screen, I want you to stop looking at your screen. I want you to like I don't want people to have any reason to think this is scripted or in any way, right? It's like,
you know.
yeah. So what were the other doubts you were having about the program? Besides like the qualifications, obviously, the fact that I'm too young, the fact that you thought, hey, maybe these are all paid actors. You said another thing was like there was a lot of tough love that we were giving.
Oh, geez,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
how did that translate to doubt?
So I sometimes felt like, you know, people would get called out in the Facebook group, like maybe like how's that helping? Right? Like this person needs to be hugged, not slapped across the face, right? This person needs a damn hug. Some people come in this program in impossible situations, right? Their wives or husbands have left them, they're alone with the kids, they're alone with the dogs. I've seen people whose significant other moved to another country. So people can come in pretty desperate. And, you know, and then they post stuff the wrong way on their third or fourth post, and they're getting smacked. Like you look at that and go, is that what they really need? Right. But they're not just, they're not smacked down by either members or you or some of the other coaches in a way that um, is meant to hurt them. It's used to make them learn, right? And you don't realize that the first time or two. Yeah, I would tell people, you have to check your ego in the door at this program. Whether you're a CEO, a doctor, a nurse, it doesn't matter. Like, what you do in life, we're all the same in the program, and our situations are all essentially the same. And you just have to do the work. And sometimes I felt bad for myself joining the program. People feel bad coming into the program. And you feel like, oh, wow, they need a hug and he's slapping them down. Why is he doing that? But then once you're in the program, like a couple of weeks, you start to realize why.
And just for people to understand why, and this is something that I struggled with a lot, because obviously I don't enjoy giving people tough love. I don't enjoy slapping people around. It actually takes a lot of emotions out of me. It takes a lot of emotional energy, spiritual energy, mental energy, everything, right? And it does take me a while to shake it off after a while. But, I tried the nice approach. I tried the really mean approach. And I tried this balanced approach now of like giving balanced tough love in a way. And the reason why I think tough love is necessary is that, people come into this program because their partner has pretty much given up on them. And you ask the question, like, why did their partners give up on them? Because maybe your partner's been trying to tell you what you need to do for a long time. They've tried to tell you in a nice way, doesn't work. They tried to tell you in a mean way, doesn't work. They try to tell you in a stoic, logical way, doesn't work. And them seeing like none of these methods work is what gets them to say, fuck it, forget it, right? So
yeah,
you come to this program and you say like, well, what I need is a hug. Well, people tried that already, right. And it doesn't work. So we need some more drastic measures to wake you up, to make you listen and go realize where you actually are, kind of thing, right? And the second thing also is the standards again, right? I think when you first join the program, you think, okay, bettering yourself is level 5, but really we're talking about level 150. And so when we see that people are operating at a low level, we just think in our heads like, you can do better. Why aren't you doing better? You're smart, you're capable, you've accomplished a lot. Why are you choosing to suck? So it's almost like when we stop giving you tough love, that's when we've given up on you. And I have given up on some people. There's some posts that I see that I'm like, this guy, forget it. Like, this guy's not going anywhere. I've tried, right? So if you're getting tough love, it means that people believe in you. And when you stop getting tough love, that's when people have given up on you. That's not a good thing,
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's great is the community helps each other, and like other community members will call you out on, hey, you're doing this, you're asking stupid questions. This is in the program, this is in the mental map. But I think initially the tough love can be jarring to a new member. They go, whoa, I didn't realize I got myself into this.
Yeah. But our solution to that is not to like stop giving tough love, but I'm going to put that part about receiving tough love earlier in the program too, to be like, hey, you're going to get tough love. Just know that. But if you're getting it, here's how you see it. Here's how you think about it. Okay. Change the way you think about it because we love you here. Last thing about kind of your experience in the program is like, one of the questions we get a lot, Robert, is, and I just saw one comment today. Someone saying like, honestly, the videos are so deep. The YouTube videos are so deep that you can just probably pick and choose what you want to learn from the videos and probably get the results you want from it. having been someone who actually experienced the program and also YouTube, what would you say personally for you is the massive difference between program and YouTube?
Oh, they're not even close. They're not even and the looms, like the videos within the program that we get outside of just the course material that you've created, which is super deep, much deeper than what's on YouTube. Um, the Facebook group that only members that are in the group, that are in the program, are have access to. Um,
Mm.
and the Loom library, which is the coaching calls, other resources that we have, other recordings and things that, there's a tremendous amount of depth to that goes beyond like anything I thought about before I came into it. And it's there's a lot of material. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff to learn from.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand, right? It's like there's a lot of stuff that I can never talk about on YouTube, not because I am an asshole who wants to like gatekeep and just not share the things, but it's really because there's so much prerequisite knowledge that needs to be known before you learn that particular thing, right? So, for example, you could take a simple concept like leaning into resistance.
Hmm.
In order for you to lean into resistance properly, you would need to know so many concepts. You would need to know paradox of change. You would need to know thriving versus surviving. You would need to know non-victim mindset. You would need to know untethering. You would need to know antithetic mindset. You would need to know SOC. You would need to know, I mean, there's so many skills, including all the frameworks, all the different nuances behind that. And, it's almost like if I decide to teach those things in the YouTube videos, people are going to misuse that strategy and tactics so much, and
Right.
I'm gonna create so much damage in so many relationships from people misusing it. I cannot live with myself if I like launch a
Yeah.
video like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing too is there's a very vast distance between conceptual understanding and experiential understanding, I think. It's almost like, imagine you watch a couple of YouTube videos around playing basketball or dancing. You can't play at a world-class level like that, right? Sure, you can become better, but you can't be world-class. To be world-class, you need to actually have someone pinpoint to you antithesis, your blind spots of your performance, stuff that you cannot ever see yourself, like with your shooting form, whatever it is. Like you need to go outside the realm of what you think you know. And that's, I think, a massive part of what the program gives is that the program gives you the opportunity to actually like show your work, have the coaches who have advanced to very high levels give you critiques, feedback, look at your blind spots. Other members can do that. And it's just like it makes you a performer. It makes you live it, breathe it. It's a lifestyle, right? Rather than something you conceptually understand. And that's
Yeah.
a very vast distance. Like you said, right? You can get your partner to say you've changed pretty quickly. But for your partner to believe and live and feel those changes, that's a whole nother level kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, you know, the more you talk in the program, the more jammed you are to one side, the harder it is to reprogram yourself and unwind these things. I was a guy who was like super
Yeah.
jammed to one
Yeah.
side. And so
Yeah. So let's talk a bit more about how things are like now. So
okay.
obviously this has many repercussions, not just on your marriage relationship, but in everything else too. Because like nobody has relationship problems. Everyone has problems with itself that reflects in the relationship. And if it reflects in the relationship, it reflects in your ability to parent, your ability to work, etc. Right? But let's start with the marriage first. How are things like now in your description?
So we were talking this morning. I mean, our relationship in terms of being able to talk to each other and communicate with each other is better than it's been, in a really long time, if not ever. and we're able to talk about things. In particular, she's able to talk about things that she probably couldn't talk about with me in the past because I would make her feel bad about them. We refer to it in the program as emotional safety, I think, in the YouTube videos.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that I can't say it's all returned, but I think it's returning in that we communicate with each other in a way that we never have. Our parenting together is the best it's ever been. We are aligned on raising our children, and when issues come up with two teenage boys, as they will, we usually can get to a win-win. And my relationship with the kids is the best it's ever been.
Yeah. That's the part where, saving marriages is great. Whenever like I have these interviews, save someone's marriage, wonderful. But if you look in the program right now and you look at like, you would realize that there's a lot of people with the same last names, because we've been in business long enough now to where we've enrolled some dads, and now their kids enroll into the program too. That's like, that's beautiful, because like a massive reason of why I decided to do this program in the first place was I wanted to break my own generational curse, which is like when, if I look at my lineage, my great 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 grandfather was probably pretty toxic, which made the children toxic, which made eventually my parents toxic, and I was toxic because my parents never taught me how to really be in a relationship. And I wanted to break that curse to be like, okay, from here on out, from me down, it's gonna be great. The Setiawan family is gonna be much better.
We both were talking about this today, that people don't understand how we're in the same house, that long. And, I told her I was proud of her, and she told me she was really proud of me, and that the way we've handled things through all this has set an example for our children, which for us has always been sort of the guiding thing. Like, how are we going to deal with this? And honestly, it's Geoffrey, I refer to the program, and I would tell people thinking about joining, it's not about saving your marriage, it's about saving yourself. It's a personal development class. It's a personal development course and methodology versus a here's how I save this, right? That was kind of the eureka moment I had way back when. Was this is about me and self and how I show up in the world every day and how I show up for my kids and for my wife. And I show up differently every day now. I used to be a gigantic stress monster, like because of work and just but everything. If something went wrong at a restaurant, if whatever went wrong, like car got a flat tire, like I would fly off the handle and all hell would break loose. Now everybody in the house jokes around. I'm like the chilled one in the house now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a great example for the kids, like not only directly in terms of showing them an example of how adults actually should behave, how they could behave, how to behave, but also it gives like this aura of calmness of that is so good for like child development, right? Because we're planning on having kids soon. I've been reading a lot about parenting books and like developmental kind of things, right? And it's crazy to me to look back at the subtle things I get from my parents and their culture, even some things they don't even say, right? Even just a feeling that would affect me in a massive way, right? So for example, like if let's say my dad would have gotten a flat tire, he would tell me verbally, "It's fine. We'll take care of it." But he's stressed. You can feel the stress.
Yeah.
Even though verbally he's saying all the great things, right? It makes me feel as a child like, oh no, problems are something you should stress about. And that is such a subliminal message that I carried with me throughout my whole life. And I never questioned it. I never questioned like, well, of course problems are supposed to be stressful, right? And then I use that maxim to drive my partner crazy. And then whenever my partner points out to me that I'm driving her crazy, I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? This is normal behavior. You know what I mean?
I just kind of go into like victim mindsets when I start stressing about something and I
Mm.
start diagnosing for myself, like, how is the fact that I'm stressing about this going to get to a solution any faster? And how's it going to help me solve the problem?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, if I'm freaking out over my kid's tire getting punctured, like me being stressed about it isn't going to help the situation. And you know, I don't know. I think that you were mentioning background, and this is something I don't know if you want to go here at all, but her and I both come from divorced parents and divorced households. And in my case in particular, I came from a household that, my mother, God bless her, rest in peace. She was a wonderful woman and did everything humanly possible to help us. But she was married to a tyrant. My father was not a good person, and I think a lot of men in particular, I'm not saying women don't have this, but I know for me as a man, I didn't have a positive example growing up. And as a husband, I started mirroring the behaviors of my father and the shit I saw in my house. And I thought I was being normal. And it was definitely wasn't normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
And a lot of it
I
is very
digress.
subconscious. A lot of it's very
Yeah.
subliminal too. Like, I remember saying to my partner all the time, right? I will never be like my dad, for example. But
I literally, that's something that um, was something her and I talked about before we even got married,
Mhm.
was no matter what happens to me, I will not become that man. And then one day I was sitting there and I'm like,
You
I'm
have
becoming
become that.
him. My
Yeah, I am that.
relationship with my kids is getting messed up. My relationship with my wife is messed up. My career is not where I want it to be right now. What am I doing? And, it's crazy how that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I want to get to the learning lessons here. Number one is I want to talk about how you said basically the moment when you decided I'm going to do the program regardless of the outcome because I'm determined to just become a better husband and father. And that's my goal. My goal is to become a better husband and father regardless of the outcome. Ironically, that was the moment when you started getting your results, when you decided to do that. You shift your focus, right? And we talk
Well,
about this in a lot of our videos of like the difference between thriving and falling. Getting your partner to fall in love with you or getting people to fall, to trust with you, to love with you, to like you, it's a falling outcome. It's not a striving outcome.
right.
And the problem that I see with so many people is that they join this program or they join a program or they try to save their relationship with the intent to save their relationship,
Right.
right? That is like you trying to go to sleep with the intent to fall asleep. You will never fall asleep that way. In fact, it will backfire. The same way, if you go into trying to save your relationship with the intent of trying to save it, you ironically will never save it, which is why this concept of untethering is the first thing we learn in the program and it's such a crucial part of the program, right? Um, and the reason why this is the case, and I'll let you speak after this, like to kind of hear your thoughts on this, is the reason why this is the case is, you know, I want you to imagine, right? Someone gave you a gift, but you know that someone gave you a gift and you can't explain it, you can't feel it, you can't articulate it, but you know it comes with strings attached. You know they want something. You know they have an agenda in mind. You know they
Right.
have an end in mind. You know that. You don't know why you know that, but you can feel it. Can you fully trust that person's gift and the intention behind it,
Right.
etc.? The same way, right? You can say the perfect things. You can say the best, most romantic with a flower, with a rose or in your mouth kind of thing. You can stuff a suitcase full of $1,000,000. If she cannot trust the intentions behind why you do it, because your intentions are conditioned, are conditional, has some end in mind, even if she just sniffs a whiff of that, it doesn't matter what you do.
So I think for me, the moment was like when I was also having doubts about the program and restarting was, you know, here we have two kids together, regardless what happens with her and I, we're, we have to raise kids together. We're going to be at weddings together. We're going to be wherever together, right? Whether we're married or not married, it doesn't matter, right? It's the most significant relationship I've had with somebody in my life. Mm. And I need to be able to be in a place with that person where we're respectful and awesome and can be good together. And that was like the thing for me, like too many programs like don't focus on that aspect either. And like, so for me, like I'm a very, because of sales, I'm a very outcome driven guy, right? I have a number that I get every quarter and you have to hit that number or you don't. It's pretty binary. And it made me like that all the time, even in relationships. Like, what am I getting from this? Where am I going with this? And it didn't just damage my marriage, but it also damaged some of my friendships.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was talking about this with my wife last night, because I couldn't sleep last night because like I was thinking a lot about the business and I was feeling a bit bad about the business, about this coaching business. And the reason why I was feeling bad was, I was right now that I have two big projects, right? I am trying to revamp my program, which is going to be a 2-year undertaking. And I'm also building my team, building the coaching team, etc. Those two activities, I will not see any benefit to those two activities for probably another 3, 4, 5 years. So I've been seeing my coaching numbers flat, and I've been feeling that guilt. No, something needs to be happening. I need to be moving something forward, right? But then I realized with her yesterday, it's like, this is why a lot of people cannot get big success. They only think in terms of quarters. They only think in terms of months. They only think in terms of 1 year, 2 years. The real big winners, they're planning 5, 10, 15 years ahead, right? And that's a massive difference in mindset, in scope, and like the way you think about things. And so like, again, the reason why so many people struggle is they're only interested in learning or growing a skill if they can see that skill will yield some results in the next quarter, in the next year, or in the next foreseeable future, right? And their motivation is so tethered to that. They strive for that, right? So going back to the falling versus striving, if you really want to work on your sleep, you really have to work on your diet. You really have to work on lowering your dopamine addiction, which are all like multiple month long like ordeals here. But people want to fall asleep asking like, how can I fall asleep now, today, tonight, right? And then they take some shortcuts. They take melatonin, they take sleeping pills, they do all these rituals that is not healthy for the long term because they're trying to fix it in the moment. It's just a mess.
I think people do that with untethering too, though. I think like we come into the program and people are after like 2 weeks. Oh, I'm untethered. I'm good.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you're not,
bro.
You're not at all.
Yeah. So just to recap this first point, right? Is again, if you really care about reconciling, if you really care about the outcome of reconciling, of having the best marriage possible, whatever it is, you have to realize, guys, that marriage and reconciliation is a falling outcome. It's not a striving outcome. And so the more you come into trying to save your marriage with the intent of trying to save your marriage, the worse it gets for you, right? You have to learn how to do, not to have, but to do because you are. to love that the process of growing, of becoming, of learning the skills intrinsically, right? And if you are still so tethered to the short term of like, how does what I do today yield results in 3 months, in 4 months, in 5 months? And if I don't get results in 3, 4, 5 months, I'm going to get antsy and get all like sad and get all like doubtful and everything like that. Then you are missing the whole point of what it takes to actually reconcile. Because the moment when you can let go of the prospect of reconciliation is the moment you actually start getting results. The same way the moment you try to stop trying to tell yourself to fall asleep and just fall asleep, that's when you fall asleep. That's why untethering is crucial. That's why we teach untethering so early on in the program. So it kind of like goes into the second point here, which is, you know, the moment when you started to untether and you started to have a much better and much more correct intention for your changes, where it becomes more unconditional, your changes, that's when your changes become actually more genuine, more trustworthy for your partner, where your partner was like actually leaning into it now, telling you like, you know what, I feel safe enough to tell you like, I think you changed right now. I think you've changed really drastically and everything like that. You know, it's almost like if you picture the list of changes, right? You like, a lot of people are trying to make changes that can be easily faked, can be easily manufactured. Like, for example, they ask questions like, tell me what to do and say. Like, I can tell you what to do and say, but none of that will work because your partner will know that you can plan that shit. You can watch a YouTube video, you can join a program and plan, learn some scripts and plan that script, right? But I think what your partner needs to really know to really trust your changes is, what do you do when you get those curveballs? What do you do during the unplanned moments? So what if she comes home to you one day and gives you a massive curveball to show you a tough truth that's been happening for a very long time? Like, for example, I haven't told you this, but I've been seeing someone else, for example. Mm-hmm. What do you do when someone really pisses you off on the road and you got a flat tire? What do you do right then? Right? That split second. What do you do during moments that are difficult, that are really difficult, when you're exhausted, when you're tired, when you cannot really fake things anymore? And how consistent are you with your changes, right? Because anyone can fake what to do, what to say when the moments are easy, when it's planned, when you're sitting on a couch together, you're sitting in a therapist's office and going like, well, let's talk about our relationship. Let's talk about what we can do. But it's really hard to fake what you do when you're thrown curveballs, unplanned moments, difficult moments, like, and it's hard to fake being consistent for so long, for many months, right? And when you can show your new self through these tiny moments, it doesn't matter how many, you have 100 moments when you said the right things, but it's in these tiny moments where you cannot fake. That's the one she'll watch, right? How is that manifested in your relationship? Like what? Yeah, go ahead.
I think so. There was a situation that happened May. So in May, I was laid off from a company I had worked for 11 years. I was part of a restructuring. And I literally found out about it. I was in the kitchen 15 minutes later with my wife and my 2 sons. And I don't know, logistically, something needed to be done in the house. And I'm like, hey, I'm unemployed. I can take care of it. And her jaw hit the ground. And she didn't tell me right away, but she told me later on. She's like, I kind of knew you were becoming a little bit different when the day you got laid off, you were in the kitchen joking about it with the boys, right? Because 11 years is a long time to be at a company. And for me in the past, when I had received bad news like that, I would have taken the whole house under. I would have been miserable for 2 months and running around here like with a chip on my shoulder, making everybody feel miserable. And I was joking about it. And it certainly is a serious matter, right? I'm the one who makes the majority of the money in our house. But we had fun with it for a little while. And I think she recognized then, he's a different person. He's become somebody different. I think that was a big one.
Yeah. And I think that's really the crux. Like we talked about, what's the difference between like watching YouTube videos versus going into the program, right? Really, we're asking the difference between like what does it mean to just conceptually understand something versus like experientially become something. And I think that's the difference, right? It's like I could teach you all the scripts and things to say all you want, but you know what? During the moments that are really hard to fake, those scripts are not gonna be your default. There's no way. So a lot of people get really confused, right? Well, Jeff, I've been trying this, I've been trying this, I've been trying this, I've been trying this, but it's not working.
Right.
Well, the problem is you're looking at what you're trying. You're not looking at the moments you're not trying. What mistakes are you making there? What blind spot mistakes are you making there? That's the moments that counts, that you're not understanding that that's the moment that counts. People think the moment that counts is like when you come home and you buy your wife some flowers. It doesn't count because your wife knows that's easily planned. It's easily faked. It's easily done.
I think for me, like once I had that realization that a little context, my wife is big into self-help. She's been going to therapy a very, very long time. And she's big on books. She's big on personal development stuff. And I always used to poo-poo it. And I go, I don't need to read that book. I don't need to go to therapy. I don't need to do that stuff. That's for crazy people. I don't need to do that crap. And but I think for me, the realization, first when I had the realization that I'm the problem, set me on a different path. And the path that like where things really clicked for me was when I had that moment that like regardless of how relationships, like how my marriage and whatever works out, I want to go through life differently the rest of the way. And that was powerful for me to have that moment. And it set me on a different path for how I view the program and how I do the program.
Interesting.
Because
that'll be good to know for my next version of the program too, because like I've been kind of noticing the same realizations for me. It's like I think what's missing from V3 of the program right now is again that strong definition of the why behind whatever it is you're doing, like the strong definition in your head, in your mind, not only just conceptually understanding the why, but like feeling the why of like why this is a very important journey to go through and why you need to do the work, etc. The intention.
I think it was a coaching call you did too, where I saw like where I was thinking about myself and like I realized it's not just my marriage that was messed up. There was a lot of other things in my life, a lot of other things that I looked at. I was like, this isn't where I want it to be right now. This isn't where I want it to be. This isn't where I want it to be. I'm the common denominator in all of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not like
that actually puts you ahead of a lot of other people because like a lot of other people, they don't even realize how much damage they've caused, right? Because like for me, for example, like back then, I looked at the relationship with my back then like girlfriend, right? And yeah, we weren't the happiest, but we were also we had some good moments here and there, and that was the standard I lived by. It's like this is normal. This is the relationship. This is what it's supposed to be, right? But you don't realize like, no, this is not how it's supposed to be. Like we're not supposed to fight once a month, even. Like this is not right.
Yeah. I think it even gets amplified too when you've been married longer. You start to see more people around you who, you're supposed to be a little bit unhappy when you're married 15 years or 20 years, right? I think that gets amplified,
I,
and
I
people are like, oh, you're supposed to have more problems and not be
mm,
as happy.
yeah. Third topic I want to talk about is like this concept of responsibility that you talked about. Getting rid of the victim mindset. And that's a massive one because that's like the moment you turn around was when you really got rid of your victim mindset. Um, like what so we talked a bit about like what were some of the manifestations of how you felt for the victim mindset back then. You were um yeah, I guess say more about that. Like what how were you playing victim?
In the relationship, in life, I mean, I mean, there's a
Let's
lot of
start
ways.
in the relationship first.
I think the biggest way I played victim throughout our marriage was when my needs weren't being met, whatever they may be, emotional, physical. I It was much easier for me to blame her and her issues that she has than to look at my own.
Hmm.
And I I think perfect product was a big thing for me. I would look at, and I use that term, that's a program term for me, thinking, hey, look at me, I'm awesome. She's the issue, right? And I think I did that a lot throughout our entire marriage,
Hmm.
where I would say, when she came to me years ago and said, you need to go get some therapy, and I'm like, I'm not crazy, you are. I said some really hurtful things to her, like back in 2012, 2013. And I think that was, for me, one big way I played victim. The other way I would play victim, it was, at one point in our marriage, I was traveling all the time for my job. I would travel, I'd be working late hours. Here I am doing all this crap, and you're home with the kids. And, I'd come home and maybe dinner wasn't made or something wasn't done the way I didn't like it. And I would blame her for it. And it's like, then I would stay home with, when the kids were younger, then I'd stay home with the kids for a day and be like, oh my God, how does she do this every
Yeah.
day?
Yeah.
Right. So,
It
so
it mirrors mine so closely because in two ways, right? So back then, I really struggled to put myself in my partner's shoes, right?
mhm,
So
yeah.
for example, okay, I never realized how much she contributed to the household until she
Mm-hmm.
left. Then I
Oh,
realized, oh
yeah.
my God, like there's so much nuances that she's doing that I didn't even understand was a nuance before,
Right.
right? But yeah, I was always nagging. I was always like blaming everything on her. If something is happening, I would blame it on her, right? Um, and see myself as like a high horse. She's in a pony, going like, "Come on, you like get it together." That's the first way for me. Second way for me was, um, like for example, she was not very attentive, or she was not very like committed to us and the relationship. She wasn't very giving in terms of like quality time back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to always blame it by saying like, no, she sucks. Right? Something's wrong with her. But I never asked myself to go like, how am I fucking up the environment to make it so hard for her to do so? And I realized at that point, like, well, maybe Jeff, the reason why she cannot give you quality time is because you always are an asshole to her during the quality time, right?
Right.
Maybe it's because
Yeah. You're not fun
you,
to be around.
yeah, maybe, or maybe it's because like you somehow throw all the chores away to her, and now she's so busy that she doesn't even have time for quality time that you want. I mean, there's so many
Like,
things like that, you know?
I'm thinking about something new, and I don't have my mental map up, so I need to actually think about this after the call. But we went through some stuff in 2017 where she got sick from a medication she was on, and it put her in a very bad depressive state.
Hmm.
And when it lasted for about a year. And when she came out of that, she was it took more strength and work for her to get out of that whole thing, um, than I've ever seen from somebody. And
Mm.
I jealousy is the wrong word. I think I became um, not jealous, but maybe envious of the way she had pulled herself out of this. And like her life changed after that. And she became a little bit of a different person. And she went on what I would say, a period of growth, personal growth that was pretty remarkable. And I think I became a drag on us because I became really like emotional needy after we went through that phase.
Mm.
And like our social plans would always be made by her, or I would always I, it's really hard to describe, but I was like a Klingon after that. That's the best I can
Okay.
describe. And it just got weird. I became super needy, and I think it was um, a result of some victim mindsets and me feeling like, oh, I should be on this high horse, and I should be the power dynamic should be different in our relationship. And I'm not there yet in the program where we talk about power. I'm just getting to that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I got like I became stale, and she was growing, and she was going like, and I was just going, and I became a drag on the relationship.
I think that's the worst part of victim mindset is like what first of all, people are always so blind to it. It affects you in such subconscious ways that you don't even know, right? Because we call this a blind victim in the program because like there's always a like you know have you ever talked to someone, for example, who's always just playing the woe is me card? Everything sucks in their life. Everything is like bad, right? They will never see themselves as the victim. No matter what you say, like you can try for days or hours or weeks to like try to tell them like, dude, stop playing victim. They're gonna get pissed off at you for telling them who how dare you call my state of mind a victim mindset, right? I'm depressed for real. Like they get so offended. And it's so hard to get out of the mindset, right? So my question to you is really, first of all, I guess why do you think now getting rid of the victim mindset is such a crucial part to success, to journey, not only in your marriage, but also in career, in like with your kids? Like, why is getting rid of that victim mindset so crucial for you?
You know, we talk in the program about having a responsibility, right? And we have a responsibility. I guess as a husband and a father, I have a responsibility to my family to show up every day as a good human being.
Mm.
And you were describing me a minute ago. I in work I used to do that all. Oh, they screwed me on my territory. They screwed me on my quota. Versus I work for this amazing company. There, I have these benefits that are great. I have no debt in my life. I've made a lot of money. I never looked at. I tended to throughout life look at the negative side of things,
Mm.
and it's just you can't reach your full potential as a human being if you're constantly playing victim, and if you're constantly looking at, oh, it's not my own fault. We talk about the hero's journey in the program, and I have fully embraced that.
Mm.
And I think that people who are successful in the program embrace that, and it's made me a much more positive human being to be around. And I think anybody that's in my life around me, my friends, my family, anybody would say I'm a completely different person than I was before I started the program in
Yeah.
terms of my positivity. Um, so did I answer your question or no?
It does. It does. And just for people to understand this concept of responsibility a bit, the best example I can give is like imagine You step into an elevator, and in this elevator lies like a man who's like bleeding to death, dying, whatever it is. Is that man dying your fault? No, you didn't know. Like, you didn't do anything to that guy. But in that moment in time, when you walk into the elevator and you see that dying man, can you respond? Do you have response ability? Yes, right? And whether your response is to do nothing, to pretend like you want to ignore it, that's still a response. And that response has an effect. And that's what we mean when we say like the feedback loops, right? It's like you are right now already affecting your partner's behavior. Your partner comes home, says something shitty to you, stonewalls you, gaslights you, whatever it is. If you then get offended by that and you stonewall back, you gaslight back, you get angry back, you just responded, right? And you just worsened that feedback loop. So at every single moment in time, every single second of your life, you are responding, right? And so the people who are failures, the reason why Robert says like it really limits your potential is that people who are victims, they don't realize how many times a day they respond like a victim. They respond by denying the problem is there. They respond by pinning the problems on other people. They respond by absolving themselves of needing to do work or looking at their own flaws. It's just every second, right? They waste these opportunities by responding in a victim way.
And alongside the victim mindsets is FAE bias. I didn't even know what it was before I joined the program and recognized I was dripping in it around people, my wife, people I work with, my kids, like I would blame them and their character for things that, I would do the very same things. And it was pretty bad. In particular, I would again blame her depression, her doing, why can't you just take care of the kids at the school and I have to deal with it? Like,
Yeah.
there were so many ways, subtle ways I would do it. And then when I learned about it in the program, I'm like, crap, I've been doing this forever.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's like, it doesn't need to be bad for it to slow you down drastically. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, imagine like, in this utopian world, you have 200 decisions a day you have to make. You take A, B, right? One guy does all 200 in a hero way. The other guy maybe makes 2 decisions that day in a victim way, just 2. So 1% worse. So we're talking about 100% versus 99%. You compound that for a whole year, every single day. That difference will be 37x by the end of the year. And so sometimes like we often say, the standards of victim mindset is like, okay, well, Jeff, I'm not playing victim. I don't play victim all the time. But just playing victim sometimes is enough to really slow you down. Right. So just be careful of that. And last question about this victim mindset for you is like, what was the moment when you started to realize how much victim mindset you had and you started to like turn your mindset around and started noticing just like how much victim mindset, like when did you stop being a blind victim? When did you start being an aware victim? I guess.
I think there was a moment around the same time I restarted the program where I was at my younger son's therapy session and he was talking. It was in an intro with me and his therapist. We were talking about some stuff and 3 of us were chatting. And he just made some comments about the way the way that I had behaved at some of his hockey games. And I was mortified at the way he saw me as Geoffrey, it's really hard to describe because I actually hadn't really thought about this before. Um, but it was in that moment where I'm like, oh my God, I'm such an asshole. Like, and what is going on with me? Like, I had this moment where I was like, I connected the dots between my relationships with my job, my wife, and my kids, excuse me. And I sort of recognized again that whole I'm the common denominator in some relationships breaking down. And I'm walking around thinking everybody's out to get me, like that I'm owed something. And nobody owes me shit. Right. And I owe it to them, the people in my lives, to show up better. And like the way I've been showing up for the past couple of years really sucks. And it's hard to describe that. I just had a moment where I connected the three dots, that all these things were going wrong at the same time. And I was the common denominator. It's not them, it's me. And then through the program, I started to learn about how I've been behaving this way my entire life and how I've been playing victim for a really, really, really long time. And I think a lot of people come to that realization. I think a lot of people in the program, everybody plays victim, and it's something that comes back too. It's not something that like you beat and it goes away. It does come back. It's very subtle and it creeps in a lot of different ways. So you have to be mindful and use the things we learn in the program to beat it back and to put it back where it belongs. But I think I just think it was I connected those dots. I felt mortified as a parent that my child was embarrassed by the way I behaved at some of his games. And I'm like, dude, you're such an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had that moment where not only am I an asshole to my wife, I'm an asshole to him and people at work. And like, you
Yeah.
got to change. You're too young to go through the rest of your life this way.
It's funny you say that because like a lot of people who are victims would have their sons like say like, hey, you're kind of like an asshole in a lot of my games. And they would say, what's wrong with you? No, it's the problem is with you, not with me. Stop perceiving what I do in a wrong way, for example, right? You don't understand
Yeah.
why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So I could argue that you were already playing non-victim at that point in time. You were already a non-victim. So something woke you up beforehand. I think if I look back in my life, like what woke me up is really just I have nowhere else to hide anymore. There's nowhere else to latch on my problems to anymore. I've run out of branches, right? So which is why
Yeah.
like when someone applies for our program and they're still assigning their problems to like their partner, whatever it is, they still have branches to pin their shit on. You're not ready yet. Keep living life, experience more pain, and when you have no more branches, let us know.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I also want to talk about this changing your definition of a high value man for a bit. Right. That was a big one for
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
What made you think you were high value at first?
Um, I, you know, I do pretty well in my career. I have historically. I've we live in a really nice home in a nice suburb and get new cars every couple of years. We go on great vacations and I'm pretty thoughtful. I have been thoughtful throughout our marriage with anniversaries and birthdays, and I'm in tune enough with my wife, even in my most oblivious moments. Those things are very important to her. Like if she doesn't get a card for stuff, forget it. You're dead. So I was always in tune with that. Um, I coach teams for my kids, and I have friends, and he's a great coach. He did. I coach lacrosse, which I didn't never even play lacrosse. I'm committed hockey dad. I go to a ton of hockey stuff with my younger son, and you have, oh, you're a great dad. You have people tell you that stuff, right? You're a great husband. Oh my God, you guys look so happy. You're doing such great stuff. You're so sweet to her. So you think like, oh, I even do the grocery shop. I even do dishes, right? So I do dishes, right? So like, not a lot of guys do dishes. I do dishes, and I hired a maid and all this other stuff. So you think like I'm taking care of her, I'm providing for her, but I didn't realize what I was missing. I didn't realize the things emotionally that I wasn't doing for her.
So what is your definition of high value now?
Yeah, it's different. So being able to understand people on an emotional level and to make people feel like when they're talking to you, they're fully heard and understood is hugely important. And somebody who could create safety with people to where they can talk to them and feel understood by them. I had a moment a couple of weeks ago where my wife told me, the kids don't come to me anymore and tell me, don't tell dad this, but right. So they would go to her all the time, like, hey, don't tell dad, but I got this going on at school, or don't tell dad I have this happening. They don't do that anymore. They'll actually come to me and tell me stuff.
Yeah. And it's almost like the way I see it is like if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs again, you have the higher pillars like esteem needs, like safety needs, you know, self-actualization needs, love and belonging, stuff like that. Those needs. So first of all, right, a lot of people, a lot of men with their definition of high value is really low level. Even when you get to the second level of that, which is like the safety needs, they're still talking about physical safety. They're not talking about emotional, psychological safety. They're still talking about the lower end of that safety, but not love and belonging, all these things, right? Think about how replaceable the low level ones are. I can find any woman can find millions of men like you who is willing to do dishes, who's willing to get money, who's rich, who is successful, who's whatever. There's millions of those. But there's very few men who can operate at the top, the self-actualization, right? And the thing about that is like society has seen like self-actualization, love and belonging as something very mysterious, something very mystical. Like you either got it or you don't. We can't really explain it. You either feel that love or not. You know, but here in this program, we're trying to deconstruct how to create that, what that means to create love and belonging, self-actualization, whatever it is, with the 5 pillars, right? And so once we can create that, right, that's when your relationship now becomes a lot more irreplaceable. Because my partner, for example, will never say, will like, I'll be dumbfounded if she left the relationship for another person, because who else can give her that environment of self-actualization that she wants? That's really hard to get. Most people can't even put it into words. And it's really hard to create because it's not something you can directly create. So you cannot just tell someone, can you please feel more self-esteem? Can you please feel more love and like you belong? Like, look, we have a family here, right? It's almost like growing a plant, right? You create the environment for it, for the plant to thrive, and then the plant can thrive. You can yank and pull and get angry at the plant for not fucking growing, but it's not going to make the plant grow. You just have to create this right environment. And being a high value man to me is a man who can create the right environment to grow the higher level plants of that hierarchy of needs.
It's I think at times we're taught as men that the high value man, but the low level shit we're providing is what we're supposed to be doing, at least when I grew up. And, being in touch with your emotions and understanding people and all that, like it's a little bit simpy. So me being this emotional guy and understanding people at an emotional level, what's wrong with that guy, right? Let's go throw a football and lift weights, which I love to do that too. But that's like, I'm not.
Let's think about football and basketball and
Yeah. Right. Why are we talking about emotional safety and not who's starting for the Giants this weekend? Um, so
yeah. It's funny you say that because right now we're having kind of like the main point of discussion in our marriage right now is Jeff, when do you want to retire? Because she sees the emotional toll, the time toll, the energetic toll, the psychological toll this business has on me. Dealing with marriages with difficult people is not easy every single day, right?
I can imagine.
Um, so here we are, right? We make we take home about 2 million a year right now
This
after expenses, which is good. And then
is fantastic.
plus our investments, we're taking home about 4.5 million a year, right? My wife would rather me give that up to have experience, live the higher level values, right? She doesn't give a shit how much I make. She would rather live a life where I make zero and actually is there for her every single day than me making 4.5 million and me being in this office all day long. So the topic of discussion is like, how much longer do we want to give
Don't
ourselves?
quit yet. We need you.
Yeah. So that's a topic of discussion, but like that really goes to show too of like how this lower level values, once you get the higher level values, these lower values shit, they don't matter anymore. They're just like pee-wee game level. Like who cares about that stuff? Like money is it's nothing anymore. This. So yeah, just change your definition of what high value means, right? You have like guys like Andrew Tate who's like flashing their cars and their money and whatever it is. Like nobody cares. Like at some point, the right people, the right women, the right partners, the right people who are going to stay with you for the long time, they don't care about any of that stuff. Your kids don't care,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. Um, and you also said like it's like you thought it was wimpy to actually ask for help. What was that about for you?
I don't know. Like, you know, my wife's always been into therapy.
Mm.
And, when I think it was 2013 where she suggested for the first time we should go. And I looked at her, I'm like, I don't need therapy. You need to go.
Yeah.
Right. Because how dare you say it's me? Um, I don't need that shit. Um, so I'm sure it's for women too, but especially for men. Like, oh, I'm supposed to be a tough guy. I'm supposed to be able to work through this shit, right? I'm supposed to be, I provide for the family. I can work it out myself. And I think that one of the things the past couple of years has taught me going through all this stuff is like people are really uncomfortable talking about this shit.
Dude.
They're
So
really
I I
uncomfortable talking
I
about
have a
this
lot to
shit.
say about this. Like, sorry to cut you off, but like, so obviously this is my job. This is my livelihood. This is my life, right? Talking about relationships and stuff like that. Of all my friends, only one person really knows what I do. My parents don't know what I do. They don't want to talk about it. Every time, right? Like, it's so funny. Like, every time we have dinner with like a larger family, I would say, well, people ask me, like, what do you do? Oh, I help people save their marriages. My dad would cut me off and go, but he's also good at golf. Right? They're so uncomfortable they cannot deal with it. My wife's family doesn't understand it, right? So I get what you mean when you say like people are so uncomfortable talking about this, you know?
People
Yeah.
are really uncomfortable talking about it. Like people, and you talk about in the program, like getting help from the right resources and the right people. People have been through fixing themselves before, because like, man, people have some crazy opinions on families, relationships, on everything. Like you get some wild advice from people when they're like, "Oh yeah, we're separated." They're like, "Oh my god, crazy! How are you in the same house together?" So it's interesting, the things you hear.
Yeah. So I think like just to recap this point about like what it means to be a high value man, wimpy or simpy, whatever it is, right? Again, high value is about how much you can create the value of the higher level pillars, right? And you have to realize something here. You are asking your partner something really big, which is to spend her one and only life and dedicate it to you. Think about how big that is. And if you want something that big from her, you better deliver big yourself and stop parading and justifying your low level shit. Right? Be real with yourself. And if you are not giving that high level value and your partner is not deciding to spend her one and only life with you, stop getting so offended. Right?
Right.
It's not like when I was younger, I used to get really offended when like girls would like say no to me. You don't want to go on a date with me? How dare you hurt my feelings like that? But I'm like, dude, how can you get offended by that? Like, do you realize what you're asking them to do? Right? It's fucking insane if you think about it. And guys, it's okay for you to seek help, but seek the right help, right?
Yeah.
You always say, it's great that you're learning from your mistakes, but the even better way to do it is to learn from other people's mistakes, right? Here we are, we have created a program that has literally saved like thousands. We've seen the pitfalls of so many relationships, and we've been there. We know how this is done, right? So how many relationships have you saved? Kind of thing. Just humble yourself a bit. Um, the next thing is like internal shifts are everything.
Mm.
And this was a concept I think you had a really tough time grasping in the beginning of like, what is the point of the internal shifts? What were you telling yourself in the beginning for you to resist the internal shifts in the program so much and for so long as well?
Yeah. So definitely back to victim mindsets of some perfect product that I'm fine. It's not, I don't need to change. Look at what I've accomplished in my career. Look at, I got my wife to marry me. We get together for a night, 19, I fooled her. I look like an idiot and, tricked her. No, I'm kidding. But I just, it's really, really difficult. Probably the most difficult thing I had to hear from her was, I've been unhappier much longer than I told you.
Hmm.
Right. So I thought when we initially split up in December of 21, this was like something that she started thinking about in September of 2021. This is something that's been on her mind for a long time. And through all the years of therapy, not that she was being dishonest about it, because she wasn't. She was being honest with me in the moment. And we would go like this. We would go on a roller coaster.
Hmm.
Times it would be great. The times that we had extremes in our relationship, and we weren't big fighters. We never, honestly, we don't fight a lot. We never have, but it was much more subtle. Um, so, you know, I just, it I would, I lost my train of thought there for a minute.
It's
I'm
all
sorry.
good. No. So
Go back to the question again, because
for the
I'll
audience
finish.
watching this, right? We've been in
Yeah.
this interview for 2 hours now. Okay. I don't think people realize how difficult this is. The brain fog starts happening at this
Oh
point.
yeah, my brain's like,
Dude, yeah.
I'm not using
So
my mental map either. I
two
have no
more points.
notes.
We're done here. Promise you. But
Yeah,
like,
good.
what were you telling yourself when you were resisting all the internal shifts?
Yeah, that I wasn't at first. I wasn't the problem. There was no way I was the problem. And I've gone through life and I've been, hey, I was my fraternity president. I was this. I'm a great guy. I can't be the problem. And I also looked at some of these internal shifts thinking, why especially with relation to my wife, why do I have to change?
Yeah.
Why can't she change? Why can't people around, why can't my kids change? It's not me. And I think a lot of that is fear,
Mm.
and fear of looking in the mirror and saying, hey, Yeah, it is. And I got to peel back a bunch of layers that I probably should have done 20 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever. But dude, it's time now. You got to do it now. Got to put in the
Yeah.
work. And that's part of it too, is there's a lot of work that goes into changing yourself. And not to scare anybody away from the program, but it is a lot of work. We put a lot of time in and we put a lot of effort in
I
to
think
to
I think also a massive part of the denial, Rob, is also I don't think men are aware of what internal shifts could be made in the first place. Like, for example, okay, like uh I recently bought a new car, right? I recently bought the Mercedes S580. That car is like technology up the fucking wazoo, right? It's everything you need. Whenever I yawn, it knows I yawned and it massages my seat for me. Like that. Like that's the level, right? And before I bought that car, I always like said, I don't know why people spend money on expensive cars. I don't fucking get it. Because I was driving my 2009 Honda fucking Accord. I couldn't imagine what could be, right? So once I stepped into the S580, I was like, oh my God, now I get it, right?
yeah.
And once you step into that car, you cannot go into your Honda Accord anymore. I used to think my Honda Accord was like nice. I was like, what's
And
so
I like, nah.
luxurious? The seats are nice. But once you step into that car, it's like nothing else, right? It's almost the same with this. It's like you think internal shifts are certain things. And you're like, I already made that. Been there, done that. I already made the internal shifts. But until you see, you feel, you experience, you're in the program and you see what internal shifts could be, that's when you realize, oh God, I had
The
no
other
idea
hard
what the
part
fuck
for
I was talking about. Go
yeah,
ahead.
the other hard part for me is I'm a little bit older, and I look at it and said, well, I've been through I'm not 25, I'm not 30. I've been through life that I'm good. I've been through 50 something years. I'm okay. Why should I have to change now?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that was a big
That
thing for
that was
me.
hard. Yeah. And guys, the reason why internal shifts are so important, right? Is again, it creates safety directly. So imagine again, you are talking to your boss. And again, you give your boss some bad news, and your boss is saying the right things, nice things. It's okay. It's okay. We're going to figure it out. But you can tell she's panicked as fuck inside, right? Internal shifts are not there. You cannot feel safe around someone like that. The same way, if you haven't really honed in your intentions, your untethering, and you get a gift from someone and you can feel that strings attached, you cannot take that gift fully, right? So it's really hard to create safety, admiration, all these layers, even directly if you don't make the right internal shifts. Even if I gave you the right perfect things to say right now, tactically, it won't work. It's going to backfire because she can sense the dirtiness, the fishiness of that. But it also creates safety indirectly because if you are not thriving, if you're just barely surviving internally, there's no way you can be creative around curveballs, around resistance, around tough truths, around you cannot turn negative into positives. You cannot take all your partner's negative confirmation bias and actually turn it into a positive conversation. There's no way you can do that, right? And if you can't do that, you cannot create safety, you cannot create admiration, you cannot create anything. It's crucial. Last thing we're going to talk about, I promise.
Yeah.
Okay. You said if you're looking for a quick fix, this program is not for you. You were looking for a quick fix in the beginning.
I was.
True.
Yeah.
And you hated this program because of that.
I did not dig it at first.
And
I
I think
didn't.
that's the hard part with so many people is like they join this program sometimes thinking, because like we tell them it's going to be hard. Like Jason told you, it's going to be hard. Are you
Oh, he
ready?
definitely told me.
And
Yep.
I think even like your definition of hard is not really our definition of like, no. You don't understand just how deep this goes. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first two phases, guys, of the program has nothing to do with relationships. This is
Right.
all just internal shifts. And the first two phases usually takes, I was having an interview with another lady last week, and she took 9 months to focus on the first two phases alone, not even getting to the frameworks, not even understanding what to say, what to do, how to conduct herself, just the internal shift for 9 months, right? I don't think people understand that.
My second time through, the internal shifts took me 5 months after I failed at it the first time. So, and yeah, I think you say something in the program. I'm going to get the wording wrong, but people have no idea how much they need to change to get the life they actually want. And I think that's like with the internal shifts, that the one shift I had is, I want the rest of my life to be different. And yeah, you're 50 something years old, but you still got a lot of years ahead of you. I want something different for the rest of it. And that realization that I'm going to have to change a lot about myself to get what I want. There's a lot of hard work that has to go into that. And some people aren't down for that. And thankfully, I've gotten re-engaged in it, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading this book. I forgot what it's called, but it shows kind of you can inspire people or inspire results through promotions, tactics. He calls it manipulation. You can manipulate or you can inspire, right? Manipulation is when you are applying some short-term tactics, right? If you're a business, you're trying to like come up with promos, advertisements, email blasts, all these things that gets you the hunt, right? And I think people who are looking for a quick fix thinks that recovering a relationship is like hunting, right? They see it like, I just need to say and do these few things, get my partner to come back, and once she's back, it's done. But they're treating it like a one-time sale, but they're not treating it like a relationship, right? So once your partner comes back, what next? Right? Manipulation can give you a sale, but it cannot buy you a customer, a loyal customer. Same thing here, right? You can try all these tactics. Sure, these tactics are great to get your partner to come back to you for a day. Sure, it might get you the one-night stand. Sure, it might attract your partner for a little bit. But once they see that was just a manipulation, that was just a tactic, a hunt, there's no farm, out, right? So remember the game you're playing. The game you're playing is you're not playing for a sale. You're playing for a lifelong relationship, right? And so it's absurd sometimes when people ask us to say like, what do I do? What do I say? Right? It's like, dude, that's like a mathematics student going like, I don't know how to do math. So I'm just gonna go to my teacher and go like, teacher, I have like this math problem. I don't know what to do. Can you solve it for me? Tell me what to do. It's like, dude, learn fucking math. Learn the principles of math so that you can do it yourself. You need to do it yourself. So guys, if you want to learn how to do this yourself and kind of like get all this richness that Robert was talking about, including the tough love that we give you, we have a masterclass. It's about an hour and a half long. That masterclass will tell you a very wide, big picture of what the program is about. But again, like Robert said, right? The masterclass is just a big picture. Like you have no idea how much deeper we can go, and thus how high we can make you rise. Okay. We can make you rise so high to the point where his therapist started hating the program, not believing in it, to now believing in it, right? Actually enjoying it, loving it, whatever it is. So guys, link is down below this video if you want to join that. Robert, that was a hell of a marathon of an interview, but thank you so much for dedicating so much of your time.
Yeah. Thanks.
Dude, see you in the program soon. Keep going.
Sounds
You're
good.
not done
All
yet.
right. Take care.
All right, man. Cheers. Bye.